And we are live. Welcome to Talking Heads, everyone. Episode 144, your once-weekly live show for the latest in beer and tech news. I'm Jeff.
I'm Rhett.
Welcome to the show wherever you're watching from or listening from on this Wednesday night, and thank you so much for joining us. If you've never seen the show before, this is our once-weekly live show. We talk beer, we talk tech. We do drink beer on the show, however, we do keep the content both family-friendly in language and content. If you're drinking along with us in chat, either alcoholic or not, let us know in the chat, and we'll give some early show shout-outs. All super chats are read on the air, as long as they are appropriate. And thanks for watching. And if you didn't know, you can also catch us tomorrow on anchor.fm or wherever your podcasts are found. We've been doing that for like a month and a half now. Huge shout out to Funky Monk over on the Patreon who helped get that up and rolling for us. But yeah, so if the late show's a little bit too late for you, you have an audio only option that you can check out usually the day after we post here. So welcome everyone. Rhett, how's it going?
Going pretty good. Doesn't get much better than this in 2020.
Pretty much. Yeah, this is kind of business as usual anymore. Remember when drinking at home used to be a sign of depression? And
you mean it's not anymore?
Right. No, this is socially acceptable now.
Now it's just depressing.
Yeah, no, exactly. I miss you guys. I really do.
Absolutely.
Big Spoon jumping in with a $2 donation. Broadcast reminder hours ahead of time. You're late. Well, yeah, I've been doing them earlier so we get a bigger crowd here. That's how that works. Advertisement. And Josh says, $1.99, Big Spoon is here. Yes, he is. I did indeed see that. Hello to both of you. Let's see, Rhett, I see you got a glass of wine going on tonight.
Yeah, drinking a spicy Malbec all the way from the shores of Argentina. Likely grown by German farmers who escaped prosecution after World War II and fled to Argentina with their Malbec grapes. Little known fact.
All right. Very cool. So I got tired of seeing these in my fridge completely unopened because I bought these all the way back in March as soon as I heard that they were being released. And this was a beverage that has been pioneered by Aisha Tyler, excuse me, not Alicia Tyler. Aisha Tyler, host of Whose Line Is It Anyway, and Lana on Archer, and you know her from hundreds of other things. But she has a company called Courage and Stone, and she makes and bottles her own craft cocktails. And she started with both an old-fashioned and a Manhattan. And
That's
I
right.
picked both of them up, mainly to try them, but also because something like 40% of proceeds when I bought this back in March, went to helping out-of-work bartenders and service industry people,
Right.
because of the impacts of shutting down businesses. And my whole goal of buying this was to try it with you guys, and then literally the day they arrived, we got shut down, and I stopped doing the show in person. And so these have been just like taunting me in my fridge since then. And I was looking through my fridge, and I'm going, nothing really sounds good as far as like beer goes. Like I've got a couple ones I kind of want to open, but they didn't quite do it for me today. So decided we'd go cocktails tonight and give these a try. And
how is the dynamic of like the after work beer, like now that you don't really like leave home, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's interesting because I've talked about this before. I usually have a drink with dinner, and that's just kind of my, day is over. I'm relaxing with my family. We usually play a board game over dinner, and I'll usually have either a beer or an old-fashioned or something like that with me, and that's my drink for the day. There have been sometimes I don't drink at all during the day, like at all, even at dinner, and then sometimes I might have one at lunch too, and that's been kind of the new norm. Is I might have one at lunch if I feel I would like to have one at lunch now. So Anyway, first off, reviewing this, the pull tab on this broke on me, so it took me like a minute and a half to open. Literally, I'm like trying to explain like what this is and try to like discreetly open it on camera, and the thing is just like falling apart or not opening properly on me. So we'll give the container a 3 out of 10. Although that cork is magnificent. It's a glass cork with a rubber stopper on it. So.
Looks pretty even from over here.
Ooh.
And that's an old-fashioned?
Yes. This is an old-fashioned.
It looks delicious.
It smells delicious. Much, much more botanical. A lot more fruity. So I've definitely got some orange and a lot of cherry right on the nose. You definitely smell some whiskey, though. So this is not like inspired by an old-fashioned. This is 80 proof. This is straight up liquor and bitters and a little bit of sugar, and that's it. So the way an old-fashioned should be made. So we're going to give this a shot here. Just a little pour about like that on my magnificent cubed ice, which I don't know if you guys can see.
I was going to say, do you have ice in there?
Oh, yeah.
That ice is so clear.
Isn't that beautiful? I've
been working on that. In the glass. That looks nice.
No, I've been working on that ice for quite a while. Big Spoon wants to know, ASL, Josh? 109 mail and next door. Sweet, come over, let's party. You bring the lemons. What in the world is going on over there? This smells like an old-fashioned I would make. Maybe not the bitters that I would choose, but... Oh, that is wonderful. Ooh. Oh, yeah.
Dang, I'm jealous.
Yeah, that's just straight up good. Definitely a lot more, I want to say botanical, but much more fruity than I typically make mine. I don't muddle fruit in mine. Sometimes I'll add like a Luxardo cherry or something like that. But usually mine is whiskey, bitters, and sugar. This definitely has a lot of different fruit essences in there. It almost smells like cardamom. There's like some of the cinnamon that you usually get with like cardamom bitters going on in there.
Right.
More so than the Angostura. But that's not quite it either. So it's interesting. It's delicious. And it's definitely 80 proof. It is every bit of that. Since we're not counting dilution here, since I really didn't stir it, this is actually stronger than even my normal old fashions, which I usually make with a 95 proof rye. So it's got a little bite to it when you don't mix it. But that's delicious. All right. Almost smells like an orange creamsicle.
Oh, dang.
Like straight up. Let's see. Novella Hub drinking a 14 Lakes Craft Brewing Manhattan Mango Rush, 6.2%. T-Cause drinking a Founders All Day IPA, excellent session IPA. Digit Egal IT 4.0, first time I actually see you live. Greets from Germany. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Let's see. As Argentinian, I feel often, never mind, probably true. Let's see. Don't see too many else up in there. But yeah, how's your wine over there?
It's really good. Yeah, Malbecs are legit. They tend to be, for anyone interested, they tend to be on the drier side of things. Mm-hmm. But I like them because they really accentuate the more earthy notes, a little bit spicier. To me, they kind of taste like a red wine that you'd find at like a cigar lounge or something, you know? Nice. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I don't want to like go the wrong route and be like, this is a man's wine, but this is just what I like, because sometimes you get them and they got like a real good kind of zippy spice to it. Yeah. Yeah, this is great. I mean, it's a pretty good blend. got a little bit of a spice to it, but it's very earthy, which is what I really like in a red.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. I think that does it for the introductions. Let's go ahead and get into our first story, which is still very much developing.
Yeah.
So early this morning, if you tried to log into Canon's website, you couldn't. You couldn't get on their homepage. In fact, over a dozen of Canon sites are down right now because they've reportedly been hit with ransomware, and a pretty vicious one at that. And reportedly have up to 10 terabytes of data that has been stolen. Like I said, this is still very much developing, but it was reported early this morning that Canon websites went down. You were greeted with a 500 internal server error, which usually happens when a file can be found but not read, or you don't have permissions, either a 500 or a 503. In this case, it's probably because the file was encrypted. Bleeping Computer originally broke this story, and I was trying to show their news article on it, but for some reason they've pulled their news article. Although Canon's website is still down, and this is still being reported as legit. You can see on the page right here, Bleeping Computer did obtain a partial copy of the ransomware note that was dropped. And it's being claimed by Maze or Maze or however you want to pronounce that. I'm just going to say Maze. By the Maze ransomware group. And they are demanding a payment of an unknown amount. And they are reportedly stole up to 10 terabytes of data. And the way Maze usually works is they give you a deadline to pay by, or they will leak the data on their website.
And I love how friendly and cordial the note is.
Right.
What happened? We hacked your network, and now all files and everything else are safely encrypted with reliable algorithms. You can't access the files right now, but do not worry. You can get it back. It's just I don't know. I was reading that while you were talking.
Yeah. And it's very quaint.
And it's also educational, sort of like getting an email to IT. It's like, all right, if you want to see what's going to happen, if you don't listen to us, go ahead and Google Southwire Maze ransomware, MD Lab Maze ransomware, City of Pensacola Maze ransomware. It's like, they're just, I don't know why. It just brings back the sort of images of gentlemen thieves and things.
You may have heard from us from other breaches such as.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the vibe that message gives out. Someone points out, well, if they have copious backups, they would be okay. No, the problem with this particular ransomware is they stole the data on top of encrypting the data. So even if Canon has backups and they flip a switch and tomorrow their websites are up and running, unless they want that data to leak, they still need to pay the ransom. And so that's what makes this one a little bit nefarious and a little bit more difficult to deal with. 5 seconds.
Producers in the audio.
You want to listen? You want to say hi?
Hi.
Your hair looks so nice.
All right, we needed some bedtime hugs. All right, give me a hug. All right, good night. It's okay, I'll get it. All right, say good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. And of course, I dropped and tangled my headphones.
Yeah, good one.
There we go.
Is it just me?
All right.
Oh, stop back. Hey, is it just me? Back. Is it just me, or has the state of the world just lent itself to a ransomware attack?
It really has. It's also exposed certain companies' weaknesses when it comes to provisioning off different security aspects of their company, of tiering their permissions, of nested permissions as you're supposed to roll them out. You only have access to those things that you need access to. And what we're seeing recently with the attack on Garmin and now with Canon is either someone got in and got access to credentials that allowed them to encrypt the entirety of their website, as well as potential internal documents and block logins and authentications, which means they had server access of some kind and whatnot, or they have just poor practices. So from a security standpoint, ransomware is only as effective as the lacks in security or as the top-level credentials that you're able to obtain. So I've been the victim of ransomware a couple of times, and one time it was pretty bad because they got fairly high up credentials within our organization. However, it still only affected that wing of the company because that particular executive didn't need access to another executive's files. So they didn't have them. Yeah, very, very interesting when these kind of things hit and when they take down literally the entirety of a company. Attacks happen, but how bad the attacks are really puts into question what were your internal practices that led to this. So,
yeah.
What are your backup practices? Why aren't you back up yet? I mean, I know I'm talking on a global scale, and there's a lot of factors that go into remediation and you know, diagnoses and fixing the problem.
Well, but in this instance, with the threat of the leak, I mean, is their only option to pay the ransom?
If they don't want the files to leak, the only option is to pay the ransom. And so that, like I said, that adds a little wrinkle to this, that even if they had backups and even if they hadn't been hit hard, they still have to pay the ransom if they don't want whatever they got access to leak. Now, we don't know how much access they got, what information they got, if they got credit card information off the website, if that was all processed internally, if credit cards are encrypted, if they got customer information, if that data is encrypted, is it, you know?
Oof. Yeah, there's a lot there. You and John talked about it, but I think you guys talked about it because I think I put it in the notes maybe, but about a city around here getting hit with ransomware.
Kaiser, Oregon got hit with ransomware within the last 6 months, I want to say. And they ended up having to pay a fairly hefty ransom.
It was $50,000.
Yeah.
You know, which is like kind of tame, I guess, but like the fact that it's coming out of the city budget, it's like, come on.
Right.
Damn it.
Yeah, taxpayers paid a ransom because your backup policies were that poor. Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah, hopefully it gets sorted out and, you know, just learn their make. I'm sure somebody got fired over this. Who knows? If it was
we just spent $50,000 making sure they never make that mistake again. That's usually my go-to for, you know, helping employees learn from their mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone takes a service down every once in a while. Everyone pulls the wrong hard drive sled out of the wrong server, and now instead of rebuilding one RAID array, you're resilvering 2 RAID arrays. What? I've never done that.
One of my favorite spins on a common saying, you know, because NASA has it over their command center entryway is failure is not an option, but a fun spin on it is failure is not an option. It's mandatory. Right. So make sure you get all the proper failure done in the proper time. That way, when it comes time to not failing, you got all the failure out of the way. You've learned from the mistakes, and now you're good to go.
Right. That's why practice is important. Practice, 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 because you make all your mistakes in practice. You're still not going to be perfect during a game.
No. But
you're less likely to make mistakes. So,
yeah.
Teaching moment for those who have ever had employees. Just because someone screws up doesn't mean you terminate them, because the next person is going to screw up in the same exact way. However, the person you retain and you help learn from that situation, they might improve.
And they might stop other people from making that. Yeah, exactly. They can help others from not making that same mistake too. So it's like a, you know, positive.
Yep. Skull says, or go with the Mythbusters route and say failure is always an option. However, you also have to remember the second part of that phrase is, oh gosh, I just had it in my head and I lost it. Failure is always an option, and every result is a result. So
that's a good
no
one.
matter what you thought the outcome might be, whatever the outcome is a result. So Josh says to family, missing my daughter right now. Well, shout out to you and your daughter, man. Tikaz, $2. Can they leak even after the ransom is paid? They certainly could, because they have the data. So oftentimes they don't, because they want that as incentive for people to pay them. If they are making a name for themselves, and obviously they're advertising, you might have heard of us from some such leaks as the city of Pensacola Maze ransomware. Their incentive to, or they're providing incentive to these organizations to pay them by saying, look, the city of Pensacola paid us and we didn't leak their data. If you pay us, we won't leak your data. So now, is there any legal recourse? Unless you find them, no. But yeah, for those interested, this is all you see when you go to the Canon website right now. Is, we're sorry, the site is temporarily undergoing maintenance and could not complete your request. Please check back soon. Maintenance. Yeah. Did anyone check his Garmin back up from last week? They ever get their files back? Let's see, Garmin.com. Hey, they are. Look at that. Garmin is back alive.
Thanks, Garmin.
All right. So there's that. Anyway, moving right along.
This is a big one.
Yeah, this is a big one. 608,000 Honda vehicles, minivans, and SUVs have been recalled over faulty software. We all knew that this day was probably going to come eventually. We figured it might be an electric car that was having these issues. But as vehicles get more and more complex and more integrated with computers, and it's been happening for 25 years now.
Yeah.
The infotainment center of your car, the center console of your car, it's more than just your radio or your GPS unit. It also contains sometimes your ECU, your door locks, your, airbag deployment, your this, your that. And depending on the car company, it could be all integrated. It could be all separate units. I know on my car, my 2013 Nissan Frontier, the head unit is pretty much just a head unit, but it also contains the Bluetooth module and has, wires that go everywhere. It's also backup camera and everything else, but there's not really a lot of engine functions that are tied to it. Things like traction control, that's in a separate control module. Engine control, that's in a separate module. But apparently, the Honda vehicles have a lot of the vehicle control tied to the infotainment. And the reason they do that is because, well, that's the most powerful computer in the car. Why not have it multitask? Or why not have, many separate modules on the same board? And so you can have, a number of different microcontrollers or integrated circuits doing multiple tasks on a single board. And then your, production cost goes down. But apparently 608,000 minivans and SUVs from Honda are suffering backup camera and instrument panel failure that can lead to other vehicle failures. So the official list is 2018 through 2020 Odysseys, 2019 and 2020 Passports, 2019 through 21 Pilots, all of which shipped with inappropriate software programming. Is the official language in the recall. And incorrect central network software programming may cause several errors to occur that can delay or prevent the rearview camera image from displaying, which could pose a hazard because how many people use their rearview mirrors anymore who have backup cameras? I still do. Mainly because in my two vehicles, number one, I have I've got a 2004 Nissan 350Z. It has a backup camera on it. However, you're almost completely blind to the rear of you. And so I have to use a combination of both, plus literally hanging my head out the window to back it up if I'm on a corner in one-way parking on a street. A la downtown Salem. Rhett knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, God. Yeah, good luck getting out of there.
Yeah, any one-way street with head-in parking, you know what I'm talking about. You all park at 45. I can't back out of those spots. I hate it. Completely blind to the rear left. And then my truck, the review camera monitor is about this big. So.
I went to this like trade school years ago, and the first course was literally how to back out of downtown Salem safely.
Yeah, that's.
He was like, "You're going to be spending a lot of time downtown Salem, and I suggest that you. This is how you do it." And literally held like a 2-hour course on safely getting in and out of downtown Salem. He said his first day on the job in like the 60s, he just backed right out of one of those spots and got rear-ended so hard, and he looked like such a dingus. He's like,
yep.
So now I dedicate all this time to making sure it never happens to anyone else.
Anyway, the other issue that can happen to your vehicle, if you have one of the affected vehicles, is the incorrect instrument panel control module software can cause instrument panel not to display critical information such as engine oil pressure, speedometer, and gear select position until the next ignition cycle. So basically, it can freeze in place or display an invalid symbol. So if you think you're in reverse and you're actually in drive, that might be a problem. So yeah. If you have one of those vehicles, get it checked out. Get a hold of Honda. Get a hold of your local dealer. Be safe.
Yeah.
Let's see. They built 10 times redundant systems in planes, but cars are just F it. Look, it costs so much. Oh my, OMG. Yeah, no, it's pretty much it. Cars are single point of failure. Now, the advantage to cars over planes is that a single point of failure, you're usually not going to die. Now, there's some single points of failure that can cause you to die. But a single point of failure on a plane, you die. There's not a lot out of that. And I like how someone from Germany is claiming that cars are under-engineered. That's just great.
Yeah, thanks, Germany. Get out of here.
Anyway, so hopefully Honda will resolve this. Apparently back in 2018, Honda recalled about 250,000 Honda Accords over almost the exact same issue. So I don't know if they just reuse programming, maybe?
Could be.
I will say, this is a delicious old-fashioned.
It looks like you're enjoying it too much. I'm a little jealous.
I am definitely enjoying this old-fashioned. Like I said, it's... since I didn't take the time to stir it and get some dilution to it right away, it's got some punch to it. It's not a light hitter. They mean all of that 80 proof. And you taste it, and it's delicious. But now that it's diluted a little bit, melted some of the ice in here, it's like a dessert old fashioned. It's what I would want. I'd have this with ice cream. Like I said, I'm getting like
it's like a post dinner like type of drink.
Oh, it totally is. And to me, an old fashioned is either during dinner or post dinner. Anyway, that's usually when I enjoy having one. But I keep getting orange creamsicle. That's all I can smell on the nose anymore. Once I went, oh, that's those old orange creamsicle pops.
Yeah,
that's exactly what this smells like. And the taste kind of carries that through with just the right amount of rye, just a little bit of pepper on it, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of spice. Oh, it's good. I am liking this. All right. Let's see. Link down in the video description is an official statement from Honda if you'd like some more information on the recall. Let's get into our lead story for the night. And that is that This has been talked about for a couple of weeks now, and it's really been gaining steam. I wanted to talk about it last week, but we were literally so jam-packed with news. This is the item that got the cut, to tell you how much news was in the cycle last week. nVidia in very late talks to buy ARM. If you don't know, ARM is a silicon chip and is likely responsible for powering your smartphone. As pretty much all modern smartphone processors are based on ARM, a variant of ARM of some kind, as well as a good number of Chromebooks out there, a good number of low-power laptops, smart devices kind of things are all ARM-based. I shouldn't say laptops outside of Chromebooks. Outside of Chromebooks, you really don't see ARM all that much, but they do exist. And believe it or not, ARM has actually been shooting to get more and more silicon into servers as of late. Because ARM can be not necessarily as potent as x86 as far as raw horsepower and versatility. But at the same time, if you have a multi-threaded workload and you want to build an ARM processor specifically to tackle that workload, ARM is definitely more efficient because, number one, it probably costs less to produce because you're producing less silicon, and number two, you can pack more silicon into a single 1U server slot and get more silicon that's more efficient into a single 42U rack. And as we all know, basically it's production per square foot inside of a data center and production per watt, both of which are winners as far as ARM goes, as long as your use case facilitates it. So ARM is a pretty major player in the modern space, both Internet of Things, smartphone, devices you would never think of, microwaves, smart fridges, wireless access points, modems. I mean, you go down the list of, if it plugs into a computer, has something to do with a computer, if it's not an x86 chip, it's either a microcontroller or there's a really good chance it's ARM. So there you go. Anyway, nVidia is in talks to buy ARM for a reported, what was it, 37 billion, I wanted to say?
32.
Oh no, cash and stock worth 32 billion. There it is. Now this is only 4 years after ARM Holdings sold to their current ownership group for $32 billion. So they're looking at selling for pretty much a break-even point. And nVidia moving into that industry. Now, nVidia buying them is definitely an interesting talking point in the industry, because that's been, if you look at AMD, what was it, back in 2007, I want to say, bought ATI and wrapped Radeon products into the AMD product stack. But before then, it was its own independent video card company. And AMD now builds both pieces to a modern gaming system, and a modern, gaming console, in that they both produce the raw processing silicon, and they also produce the rasterization silicon in the form of x86 chips and in the form of graphics cards. If you look at Intel produces x86 chips. They're getting into the graphics card market. Supposedly next week, we're going to hear a lot more on what Intel Z or Xe or whatever the bloody heck they want to call it is going to look like, and possibly a look at some early consumer and server level products. NVIDIA, since they stopped making chipsets all the way back in 2006, I want to say, for Intel, when Intel started getting a little greedy and wanted to produce all their chipsets themselves, NVIDIA's really been out of that kind of race. They produce graphics cards, and they produce really kind of the best graphics cards around and the best graphics technology around. No offense to AMD, but NVIDIA does seem to be a little bit ahead at this point and continue to be ahead in the market. And NVIDIA does have some other ventures in there. They've got their gaming lines. They've got the NVIDIA Shield. They're also very high up with artificial intelligence. They famously partner with Tesla for helping do the artificial intelligence self-driving systems. They've also partnered with a number of other companies for systems like that. But that's all based on their GPU silicon. It's all based on artificial intelligence, heavy compute. raw performance on their GPU silicon. If they owned ARM, number one, that gives them a whole other wing to the company that could be very, very profitable for them. If we start seeing more and more adoption of ARM in desktop and mobile and compute units that we use around the home, such as, hey, Windows 10 has an official kernel on ARM now. You can download Ubuntu Mate for the Raspberry Pi and have a fully fledged Ubuntu desktop running on a Raspberry Pi. And it's as good as Raspbian or Raspberry Pi OS is. Ubuntu is that much more feature rich. It's been around that much longer. And on the consumer side of the Linux thing, there's just no competing with them. So the more and more we see ARM pushing into not only the server realm, but the compute and Internet of Things realm, as well as the home computing realm, this makes a lot of sense for NVIDIA. Rhett, got anything to say?
Well, and you just think about too, I mean, Intel and AMD are both pretty well. I think you were describing this earlier, the new Intel series that's coming out for graphics card that we'll hear about next week. But it just gives NVIDIA a little bit more of an edge in the future to make decisions on, well, to just, make money in markets if the GPU market goes down or whatever it might be. It's like future insurance for like market fluctuations for whatever. I mean, AMD is making chips and video cards. Intel is going to be doing the same thing. NVIDIA has been a big player for so long, and ARM's kind of in a space that AMD and Intel aren't in. So it's kind of an interesting move. I see a lot of stories put the spin on it that it could draw some antitrust scrutiny onto them.
It may a little bit, but I sincerely doubt it. And the reason is there are two other very well-established players who do the same thing. Who both make compute silicon and graphics silicon, especially with Intel starting to push into the graphics silicon market and push into the add-in card market that AMD and NVIDIA have traditionally owned for the last 20 years. Just because you're the market leader in graphics doesn't mean you can't have a market that, it has 3% of the marketplace as far as compute and server real estate to compete with the other people who are competing in the exact same thing. Right. So I think it's going to draw eyes, and I think it justifiably should draw eyes. But I think it also passes the sniff test very, very easily. Well,
and the only reason I bring it up is just because a lot of tech giants have been sort of looking at antitrust issues. The Discord was aflame with software giants kind of facing that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's been a minute since I think we've seen any of the hardware tech giants looking down this. Like you said, I think it passes the sniff test. That's a good metaphor for it. But all of the news outlets are kind of touching on it. And so I wonder, what sort of, I wonder what's there that might, I'm overlooking,
Right. And there could be an aspect that I'm overlooking, but just from a market share standpoint, the reason Microsoft got slapped with antitrust back in, 1998, over them squeezing out Netscape Navigator and other competing browsers, Opera, in lieu of Internet Explorer, was because Microsoft had 90% of the home desktop market. And by squeezing out competitors in favor of your own product, when you own the monopoly on the product that is used, and you're using that influence to squeeze other competitors out, that's antitrust. Now, they also got in trouble for it again in 2013 when they were trying to squeeze Edge into everything. And so they didn't necessarily get in trouble in the States, but the European Union took a hard look at them. And depending on what region you... I think we lost Rhett here. Oh, no. Yep, we lost Rhett. I saw it coming. All right. Let's go to me and big screen. There we go. Hopefully Rhett will be back soon. anyway, when you own that much of the market share, you can't use your market share to squeeze others out of the market. Now, if nVidia were to try to use its market share on the graphics side of things to weasel in an ARM processor in lieu of an AMD or an Intel processor, that's still questionable whether or not that's going to get any scrutiny or not, because you're buying the desktop platform to use an add-in graphics card. No one's buying the add-in graphics card to use the desktop platform. And so that's going to be a very easy argument for NVIDIA to make. And the existing software doesn't work. Gamers are not going to buy an ARM processor to play 3 games when x86 has the lion's share of it. It's just not. Same thing with server architecture. Unless your architecture for your program that you're running specifically requires ARM, you're not going ARM. You're going with whatever makes sense for your use case. So I was wondering when Jeff was going to notice. I was hoping it was just a temporary glitch and that he would be back. And so I was just hoping his video would like stutter for a second and then catch back up. I didn't want to draw too much attention to it. But yeah, Rhett is gone. Hopefully he will come back. I don't know that that's the case though. We had some issues early on when he and I were chatting. He says internet went down for some reason. He's trying to get it back up now. So hopefully he'll be back. If not, you get me for the next hour and 20 minutes. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting proposition for NVIDIA to own ARM. And I think there's a lot of different use cases that ARM could be injected into NVIDIA's business, either as a separate model. Obviously, the biggest thing right now that's hanging out there is Apple just announced they're using 100% ARM processors moving forward. Now, ARM is an open source technology. You can make your own ARM processor, license-free, duty-free, or duty-free anyway, and customize it to your own liking. And Apple has been doing that for a number of years, ever since they started making the A series chips. I believe starting with the A4 with the iPhone 4. That's Apple-grown silicon. And now they're producing the A13, A13X. So, it's been quite a few years since they've been doing their own silicon, and the next obvious step is to do their own silicon on the desktop. Why not write all of our own code, all of our own things for all of our own ecosystem? It totally makes sense for them. What does this NVIDIA move mean for Apple? What does this Apple move mean for NVIDIA? Those are two very good questions that are going to be interesting to play out over the next couple of years. Who knows? Apple designs its own chips since 2007. The first iPhone came out in 2006, and Apple has designed some silicon along the way, but the first Apple-designed silicon, I want to say, was with the iPhone 4, where it was designed 100% in-house, using ARM technology. The iPhone has always been ARM, but they've always used off-the-shelf components, or pre-done ARM processors, or minor customizations where they took an existing code base or an existing architecture and just put it in their smartphone. They started doing their own camera technology with a coprocessor essentially a while back. I believe that started with the 3GS and then was integrated into the iPhone 4. And since the iPhone 4, it's been growing and growing and growing, and they've been becoming better and better at making their own silicon. All right. Twitter. See, I actually didn't read too much about this story, but one of the Twitter hackers accused of last month's Twitter exploit, in which they took over accounts of Barack Obama and Bill Gates and Joe Biden and Elon Musk, and you go down the list, and there were 100 some odd, major celebrity profiles that were attacked. Hey, Red is back. All right. As soon as he gets on, we'll see if we can get him back. Oh, looks like he's joining us from a smartphone. All right. Rhett, are you there? I can't hear you. Oh, there it is.
Yes.
Yes, we're on.
Yeah, on 4G though, so we'll see how long.
Let's see how long this lasts. Just send me the bill.
Yeah. Oh Lord, I might have to go get another drink after that. Yeah, not sure what's going on. So weather is a little bit temperamental compared to what it was when I started. So I'm wondering if maybe there's a down cable or something somewhere.
Yeah, the wind picked up a little bit, I noticed, towards the evening. So,
and my neighborhood is notorious for trees bringing down power all the time. This is the first time our internet's gone out since we've lived here like this, but I've noticed that the whole block is suffering the same fate. So
yeah, there's a lot of old trees in your neighborhood. There's a lot of and it's all overground power lines. See, here the majority of our power lines are all underground. There's no power poles literally anywhere on my street or any of the surrounding streets. I think there's one that goes up the main stretch, but that's really it. So anyway, we were just getting into the Twitter conversation about the Twitter hackers court date that was rudely interrupted earlier today. So apparently they're still figuring out how to use Zoom over in Florida because the Twitter hackers court date was interrupted by porn a la a Zoom bomb. Like I said, I just very briefly glanced over this story, so I'll kind of read it here live with you guys. Florida newspaper, the Tampa Bay Times, reported that interruptions grew so frequent that Hillsborough Circuit Court Judge Christopher C. Nash ended the Zoom hearing temporarily. Some attendees played music down the line. Another used Zoom's screen sharing feature to play pornography, which reporters said was the final straw that suspended the meeting. So apparently they still haven't figured out how to secure their meetings down in Florida.
No.
Which just seems like when you're dealing with someone who allegedly, social engineered and hacked their way into Twitter and got access to internal controls and whatnot, and you're planning on hosting a Zoom meeting for his initial court hearing, maybe put a password on that one and a little waiting room and all the things that we employ to keep ne'er-do-wells out. Might be a good idea.
Yeah, we're being exposed to just how technologically illiterate so many high-ranking officials are. Mm-hmm. This is kind of the big thing with like a lot of the hearings surrounding tech in Congress lately. It's like all of the young congressmen and women are like, how do you guys not know this?
Right.
To the older congressmen and women.
There were comments during the hearing this last week. For those who don't know, we're talking about the Jeff Bezos. Go down
Tim
the list.
Apple.
Tim Apple. Mark Facebook. We're talking about that hearing that happened last week, and the congressmen were saying, well, is it possible that someone who is reading the news on Facebook, that you will sell rights to have a page promoted higher up than other results that they're searching for? And Facebook went, yeah, that's kind of how we make all of our money. It's like, have you ever been on Google? You notice the first 3 results say ad right next to them? That's how Google makes all of their money. Everything else to Google is a pet project. Those 3 spots is how Google makes all of their money. And I mean all of their money. So why this is so shocking that,
Yeah, I don't know. It just shows you. I think, obviously things can only get better, hopefully, but it's just these people really ought to know more about what we're expecting them to deal with.
I see so much being, having been in IT for so long, When it comes to management, and I'm speaking to, not to be ageist or anything like that, but I'm speaking to a particular age group who, well, I didn't grow up with technology, so I just don't understand it. And to a certain extent, that's fair. I don't expect you to know how to program Java, but I expect you to know how to log into your email, and I expect you to know how to, log into your bank account online and how to do all these other things, because that's kind of part of modern society, and that's the way things function anymore. You're going to laugh at kids for not knowing how to write a check. I do know how to write a check, but I don't need to write checks anymore because it's not part of my daily life anymore. I don't pay for my groceries with checks. But there's also a segment of that population, and it's a segment of that population that is in management that will make a decision and not listen to the people who might know better. And this happens top to bottom across all organizations, across all different businesses and government types, of we're going to establish a policy based on, I think it's the way that this should work. And you leave IT going, okay, I spent 20 years in this industry. You want to listen to me? No, because I know better than you because I'm your manager. And that happens so often. And that leads to situations like Twitter, like Canon, like Garmin, like Delta Airlines. You can go down the list of Delta Airlines failures in the last number of years. But mismanagement and misguidance and insistence that you have to be the smartest one in the room to be in management, when that's totally not the case. Being a manager means guiding the ship, but trusting those under you, and trusting those who might know more than you. Yeah. And that's a hard thing for some people to get over.
Being a good manager also means being a good listener.
Yes. And knowing when you're not the smartest person in the room, and knowing when to take a back seat and let someone else make a decision. Now you back up the decision and you hold them accountable to their decision, but you understand you're not the person to make the decision, even if it's your job. So I've come across so many situations like that, and I've dealt with so many individual businesses and government organizations and everything else that have had that strategy of I'm the manager, the buck stops with me. I really want access to all of our employee files at all the time because I'm the manager and I should have that kind of access. Okay, have you heard of this thing called ransomware? Where if you accidentally click on a link, you'll literally drown us as a company. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not that stupid to do that. Okay, last week you clicked on a link and you gave away your password. Yeah, but I need access to everyone's files. Okay, and 3 weeks later they're out of business because he opened invoice.exe in some random email from a company he'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
So, happens all the time, and happens way more than is reported by the news.
He went to Amazon.com. Right.
Not that some IT people are blameless in this. There are some stupid IT people out there too. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers as a manager. I don't have all the answers as an IT person. But
we don't like using the word stupid, okay, Jeff? We like to use the word suboptimal, okay? It's a little bit more friendly to the peons.
Okay. I'll see if I can paradigm shift that in my growth plan.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and check back with it at our weekly meeting.
Double back.
Double back.
Sorry. Come on.
We're going to go ahead and
get your biz you speak. Right.
No. We're going to go ahead and double circle back to that. And
how did we not use synergy in that hole?
I know. We're going to put a pin in this.
We're going to put a pin in this. Double back once we reunify our core assets, and then we'll synergy.
Before we move on from this Twitter story, I don't know if we mentioned or not, because I was sort of transitioning from the phone to this, but But this dude's bail is held at $750,000.
Yep. Well, apparently he made that in Bitcoin, although I don't know if the state of Florida will accept Bitcoin on behalf of bail.
Is that what he made? Because I thought he got less. But maybe
I was seeing reports the day of as high as $650,000.
Oh, okay. Okay. So like comparable.
Yeah, because people were monitoring that wallet.
Gotcha.
So.
Interesting. I just thought that was an interesting, I don't know, an interesting bail amount.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm glad they're going after, cyber crimes and stuff like this. I just wish that it was applied uniformly to people.
I'm just glad I don't have to deal with that crap anymore.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
I'm reading some of your comments, and I agree with most of them. However, I can't read most of them on the air either. So just know that I'm reading and I'm chuckling along with you. People still use faxes in business communication. Oh, God, yeah. Luckily, hospitals have kind of moved on, but there's some circles of business and government that have not, where the only acceptable way to transmit something is a fax because it's more secure. Okay, yeah. You realize a fax is an unencrypted form of communication that I can snip a $2 sniffer onto a line and read all of your incoming fax. Oh, and send them over the internet to myself. And when the fax prints out, it simply prints out to the office in the middle of wherever, because the secretary said, oh, I don't want to get up from my desk to have to answer the fax because I have to do it so often during the day. And so I just want it to print out next to my desk. However, she's only half the time at her desk. And so half the time it sits there in an unoccupied office and it's confidential information regarding your health records. That's a thing. Versus email, which is encrypted two-way communication, which only the recipient can open.
Yeah. It's just wild. I mean, you think fax has been around longer than the telephone, I think, unless I'm just making stuff up. In that time, they figured out some ways to get around it. Right.
I always love when I always love when I get emails from an organization. I believe Salem Health does this. Salem Health, every email they send says you've received an email from Salem Health. Please click here to log in to view the email. You have to set up an account with Salem Health to view the encrypted email, which was sent over HTTPS from their secure server, received by Google or whoever your MX is, and then delivered to you via secure server, encrypted the whole way in flight. But no, we also need to encrypt the contents of the email and make you log into our service using an email that looks like spam and phishing.
Well,
just saying.
The healthcare industry has a lot of catching up to do as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Think about who manages the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
See.
Anyway, I could talk about that all night. I'd rather not.
That's about it for tech news, unless I'm mistaken.
No, that's pretty much it.
Jeff and I had a hard time kind of finding any more stories that were appropriate.
Yes. Now, we have been requested to talk about the following story for the last 2 weeks. So ever since this became news, we've been... It's probably been my most requested story. And that is, of course, beer mustard, or rather mustard beer. Now, supposedly, Franz's is going to be, or French's, excuse me, not Franz, French. French's is going to be collaborating with Oscar Blues Brewery to create a pale ale beer that's been brewed with French's mustard. A 6-pack will run you about $20, and you can pick one up. Supposedly, it's not supposed to taste exactly like mustard, but it's definitely mustard inspired. Seeing as how they brewed it with mustard. As you can probably tell from the facial expressions and tone that I'm talking in, I am not a fan of this venture.
Interesting, because I am.
Are you? Okay, well then we have a great conversation.
Yeah, I mean, why not? They make, flavored. I mean, they make every flavored beer. They've tried everything.
Yep.
Mustard itself is the oldest spice on record to humankind. It is about time that it's had a mashup.
It's about time the oldest beer met the oldest spice, is what you're saying, huh?
Right, exactly.
The oldest recipe met the oldest spice.
Exactly my point. These are two ancient traditions being joined into one in the modern day. I approve. Not only that, I love mustard. Okay, there's only one true condiment, and it's mustard, sir.
Ooh.
So, would you rather drink ketchup flavored beer or mustard flavored beer? The answer is obvious. It's mustard every time. And if you disagree,
I'd rather not drink vinegar.
Well,
like,
vinegar.
Given the two choices,
it's really good though. Vinegar's great.
Vinegar is a garnish, not an ingredient.
Okay. Well, say that to my grandmother's Depression era vinegar pie.
Mm-hmm.
It's delicious, and doesn't.
Sure, it is.
I mean, it's kind of tastes like pie, but
kind of tastes like pie.
It has like an aftertaste of vinegar. It's not all that bad.
Yeah,
but I like vinegar, so
that kind of popped open on my. All right, I'm opening drink number 2 here, which is the Courage and Stone Classic Manhattan.
Damn, bro, you're going for the next one?
I'm going for the next one. It's been an hour.
Well, okay. Plus, you ain't driving anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm just looking out for you, man.
I know.
I myself cracked a refreshing 95-calorie Michelob Ultra. I know. Send the cops. It's only 2.6 carbs.
Oh, no. Rhett's breaking up again. Sorry, but... Where'd he go? We lost him.
No wonder Comcast shut me down. Whatever. I can already get all the hate for drinking Rainier. I may as well drink a Michelob Ultra.
I will say, much like the Old Fashioned, this is trending kind of sweet. Although I've definitely got the vermouth in there. I've definitely got the whiskey in there. Much warmer smelling. I know that's a weird phrase, but it's a little bit more savory smelling. Obviously, it's vermouth. Yeah, kind of like it.
And this is Manhattan.
This is a Manhattan, which for those who don't know is a 2-1-2 whiskey, sweet vermouth, and bitters. Not 2 ounces of bitters, 2 dashes of bitters. But 2 ounce whiskey, 1 ounce vermouth, 2 dashes of bitters. Serve in a rock, or serve over a rock, or straight up. Guys, what kind of beer haven't you tried this year? A lot, because I usually go to beer festivals, and I haven't gone to one in over a year now.
Yeah. Normally most of the new stuff I'm trying is at the curated tap houses. It's at the brew fests. It's at Jeff's house. None of which we can do, right. Which is why I get whatever's on sale sometimes, and I get it. So, I mean, craft beer didn't disappear, but it's become a little bit more of a challenge to get into my refrigerator. Yeah.
My craft beer budget is certainly down for this year. I'm not buying nearly as much. And the stuff that I am buying is usually not quite as high shelf that I usually did, both liquor and beer. Part of that is because, well, I'm self-employed now. I took a pretty massive pay cut in order to to go full time here, and also because of the pandemic. I can't go out and go to my local bottle shop whenever I want, or all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
it's been tough. You can almost feel the disappointment in Jeff's voice. No, seriously. It's been a year since I've been to a beer fest, and I'm freaking going nuts.
Come on, Rhett, not so much. I like craft beer. Y'all seen me drinking craft beer for freaking, 2 years now? 2.5 years? 2 years.
Rhett's tastes simply haven't grown up yet. I mean,
they've grown up plenty, sir. You know what? It used to be the only one I used to have to defend myself from was John. What happened?
He got more friends.
You know what? When we were in Seattle for PAX, Steve bought a Rainier, and no one gave him crap.
He's earned that right.
Oh.
That was the exception for Steve, not the rule. And also, didn't Steve come back with like a 6-pack of 10% that day as well?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so he goes, this is my starter, and then I'm going to finish with Rainier once I can't taste anymore.
Yeah, in fact, I'm pretty sure he got the 6-pack of the Rainier because it was the special release, like pale ale, I guess, that they were doing.
Yeah.
And it was like the first time that it was out on shelves, the first time he saw it. So he got a 6-pack to see what I thought of it. Yeah, whatever. I love craft beer. I just also, there's a place for cheap beer. Just like there's a place for crappy action movies, but there's also a place for highbrow cinema.
That's right. And sometimes you just want to watch someone just
sometimes you want to watch Taken and not be judged for it.
Right. I like Taken. It's when you go to the sequel. It's when you go to Taken 2 that I'm going to start to raise an eyebrow.
Yeah, Taken 3.
Really, Rhett?
Taken 3, then we're all looking at you.
Right. Like, you watch Taken 1, it's like, okay, I need to shut my brain off and just enjoy a good ride every once in a while.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
You go to Taken 2, it's like, dude, John Wick is right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could go to better cinema.
I just watched John Wick 3. That's why action movies are on my mind.
So good.
Yeah, I loved it.
Anyway, Big Soon, $2 donation. Thank you so much. And new member Chuck, thank you for joining, Chuck. And a $25 donation to go along with the membership. Thank you, buddy. Go buy some IPAs. Now let's talk about some cool AI projects. Let's see what we can do for you. Let's see. Next story up is Coca-Cola is launching a hard seltzer sometime in 2021 called Topo. Topo Chico. Going to be a hard seltzer. Obviously not under the Coca-Cola brand name, because that'd be weird, but Coca-Cola is the owner of millions of different beverages, it seems like, and why not get in on the hard seltzer craze? A year and a half late.
Yeah.
And this one was kind of interesting to me as a coffee drinker. And Red, I'm sure you're kind of right in that boat with me.
Yeah.
Nitro cold brew tea may be kind of the new craze for the non-alcoholic drinkers out there.
I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool because to me, tea is sort of my go-to non-drink, my non-alcoholic drink. Specifically because you can enjoy it in so many different ways, specifically because it has lots of different flavors. You can drink herbal, you can drink whatever. You can add lemon, you can add honey, you can add milk. So it's got lots of utility. This seems awesome. Reading the story, nitrogen infused, just like your cold brew coffee. Mm-hmm. I'm on board 100%. I drink a ton of coffee. For some reason, I consider myself more of a tea person. I think before like 5 years ago, I drank only tea. And now for some reason, I only drink coffee. But I'm 100% on board. More so than the Coca-Cola story.
Yeah. I'm the kind of guy who sometimes has a cup of coffee in the morning. I'm definitely not an every morning coffee kind of guy. I usually wake up pretty well, and get pretty engaged right away.
Okay, rub it in. You remember me at
I'm not a
CES.
morning person. I'm not a morning person. Let's clarify that right now.
I don't know. All I'm hearing is don't need coffee. I'm a morning person.
No. Once I've awoken, I'm fine. I don't have that 2-hour drag. Now I do have like a 30-minute where it's like, don't talk to me. I need to wake up. I need to, splash some water in my face, brush my teeth, that kind of thing. Usually after about 30 minutes, I'm ready to just go. But I'm not the 5:30 wake up either. I'm the if you touch me before 7 in the morning, I'm gonna come up with fists flying, man. That's my wake up routine. So anyway, but yeah, I'm a sometimes 1 cup of coffee in the morning if I need a little kickstart for some things. But I do like a good green tea or a good black tea, and I could totally get on board with a nitro infused tea.
Well, and what's kind of fun about it too is obviously like being a nitro, like you can get it out of a tap and put it into a glass, and like looking at the pictures in this article, it looks like a light beer, right? Which I think that's really cool for.
Yeah, that's a tea.
Yeah,
that's a tea.
And it looks really delicious.
If you get me a hop infused nitro tea, oh Lord. That's all I'll ever drink other than beer.
What I think is pretty cool about it is, you hear a lot of people like, being in the communities that I'm in, sometimes people say, hey, I still want to come out and be involved in that sort of stuff, but I got to cut back on my drinking. What sorts of options are there that allow me to like hang out with my friends on the corner while they're drinking a beer, but I'm not drinking? And the go-to a lot of people said was kombucha. Now, kombucha is a great alternative. However, let's say you're working the 12-step program or something like that. Kombucha's got alcohol in it. Right. Very, very little bit, but it's got alcohol in it.
2-3%, but it has alcohol in it.
Now, tea, on the other hand, has no alcohol. And this looks like a beer. So you can stand on the corner with your friends while they drink their, whatever they're drinking. You got yourself a nitro cold brew tea or whatever, and you blend in. Right. Nobody's wondering what's wrong with you, like everybody does when you say you're not drinking or whatever. Yeah. You blend right in. You can't
enjoy a beer every once in a while?
You say, oh,
no disrespect to
I don't drink. And they're like, why? What's wrong? Sometimes you just don't want to drink a beer. And this gives it's like my go-to, it's like I started, if I wanted to slow down or cut back, I just go get a club soda with a spritz of lime in a cocktail glass. No one knows. Right. They're just like, what are you drinking? I'm like, gin and tonic.
Right.
This is the gin and tonic of beers.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Sometimes I'll do a ginger ale and cranberry juice. That's one of my go-tos when it's like I kind of want a beer, but I don't want a beer kind of thing. And or ginger beer and cranberry juice, or I'll do an Italian soda. I'll do just half ounce of syrup and club soda, and that's delicious. In fact, they make an amaretto soda or an amaretto syrup that's freaking delicious, and just a little bit of club soda with that, and it's fantastic. Non-alcoholic, low calorie, low-ish calorie, I guess.
I gotta say, if this ever becomes an option where we are, 100%, I'm there. I'll give it a go.
As soon as they start serving it downtown, we'll go.
There you go.
I guarantee Archive's going to start selling it.
Oh, they probably would. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the place I'd expect to find it. All right. Moving into a little bit of gaming and entertainment news. We've got a couple stories here, and then it's pretty much going to be your guys' show for the last half hour. Whatever you want to talk about, get your questions ready, because slow week.
Yeah.
No other way to put it. Starting with classic Halo games are going to be getting crossplay and modern features, including lobbies and matchmaking, beginning in late 2020. Now, obviously, the Master Chief Collection, the Halo Collection, which includes all of the... You know how much it pains me to say the retro Halo games right now?
I know. Don't say it.
The retro Halo games, which first debuted in 2003.
Oof.
17 years ago.
that doesn't seem real.
I know.
Wow.
There could be a high school senior who graduated before Halo came out. Do you realize that? Or who was born before Halo came out.
Wow.
Who just graduated. Yeah, like, it could be a thing. Probably is. Anyway, not to make everyone feel old, but the classic Halo games inside of the Master Chief Collection are going to be getting some modern updates. More so than the graphical packs, they're going to be modern multiplayer updates. Both cross-platform support for the Xbox One X, Series X, XXX, Gamer 69, as well as on the PC. So to this point on the platform, they've been separated into two separate server groups, but they are going to be merging here very shortly. Input-based matchmaking and server regions will also be options, as well as custom game browsers, per-game graphics options, and Xbox mouse and keyboard support. So you can plug a keyboard and mouse into an Xbox and game that way if that is your forte. There's also going to be PC file sharing and Steam account linking, hopefully not leaking, coming to the Xbox in the Master Chief series later this year. So if you have a Steam profile and you want to get the Steam achievements and all your Steam friends to match up with your Xbox Live friends, then you can link your Steam profile to your Xbox account and play your Halo on an Xbox using your Steam account.
Nice.
As weird as that sounds.
Yeah. It's crazy, but Halo multiplayer was pretty cutting edge every step of the way for the first 3 installments at least.
Right.
People still talk about the Halo 3 like map maker and all that sort of stuff. 3 was probably my least played for a while. But man, like you talk about couch split screen experiences, like Halo 1 and Halo 2 is where it's at.
Right.
So modernizing all this and like hopefully bringing it into,
right,
this decade, like that excites me.
Right. We can kind of go back and look at the history of first-person shooters and the evolution of multiplayer gaming. And you can pinpoint it down to a couple key moments. And on the console, you can knock it down to Doom kind of pioneering the first-person shooter as not just a cutesy little game, but as a hardcore game with multiple levels and elevators and multiplayer. You could do LAN and IPX multiplayer. By the way, IPX multiplayer, how's that date some people? So that was one of the pioneering features of that, and you can kind of toss Duke Nukem 3D with their engine in there as well, because there was a Duke Nukem 3D multiplayer over LAN, and you could play people in a 3D environment. Rudimentary, but it worked. And then it was kind of refined. The first-person shooter algorithm was kind of refined in Quake and Unreal. And those became what is the modern PC first-person shooter.
Yeah.
And really the matchmaking on Unreal kind of defined what it was to play online. And that's been kind of the model we followed ever since.
Yeah.
And then over on the console side, you can there's not a lot of early first-person shooters, but you can look at GoldenEye. I would say as the first modern first-person shooter on console, and then Halo as the one that refined it.
What about there's like a couple like Nintendo games that like you can barely classify as first-person shooters, but kind of are.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm having a real hard time like thinking about what some of these were. Like wasn't okay, like, and I guess this isn't Nintendo, but like,
well, Doom existed on the SNES, but it was a terrible port. You couldn't see crap.
There was one game called like I have it on the Nintendo still somewhere. It's probably in a box somewhere in this very room, called like Operation Wolf or something like that. And it was like you aimed kind of like with the D-pad and it was like you were like this army dude and you went up and here you go, whoonk, this is your screen, and you like kind of aim and shoot dudes as they're coming. I think like Gunstar was like that on the Sega Genesis as well. Yeah, either way, not necessarily true first-person shooters.
Perfect Dark and Turok. A couple people just brought those up as well.
Yeah.
BBS multiplayer. That's old school. Yeah. Definitely. Star Fox not so much in the first-person shooter, and I would say Star Fox was more an evolution of games like 1942, Galaga, yeah. 1942, those style games, because it's a rail shooter. It was kind of combining Virtua Cop and 1942, if you really want to kind of break it down. But no, Perfect Dark was the spiritual successor to GoldenEye, built by Rareware, the same development house, and completely original IP, using the same engine that they used to build GoldenEye. And but GoldenEye was the first. It was the first one that was out. It was the first one that kind of defined what the modern first-person shooter on a console should be. Yeah. And as it happens, it was one of the first first-person shooters on a console. And there were different iterations of that. Turok was on there, although I don't remember all of the aspects of Turok multiplayer on the N64. I don't think they were all that great. It certainly wasn't to the level of GoldenEye.
GoldenEye was interesting because it was like this expansive like first person or single player campaign, and like people loved it for the multiplayer, obviously. But then Perfect Dark was kind of the opposite. Like, I barely remember anything about the campaign, whereas the multiplayer was so much more fleshed out. Like, you had so many more maps, so many more modes, so many different things, so many more types of weapons. And then the stat tracking was like the best part to me, because like, I would play with my brothers all the time, and the measure wasn't like how good you did in the match. It was like, where are your lifetime stats at? And we constantly be measuring against each other, and it tracked everything. It was incredible. I mean, it was the first game I ever played where it was like, it tracked like miles walked in the game, like bullets shot, a number of times reloaded, like just these minuscule stats that matter to nothing, but then just feed into why I play Dota 2.
Yeah, there's a couple of people who brought up a couple other games. Hexen and Heretic, those were certainly good games, although I don't think they were quite as revolutionary. And that's my opinion. I could be wrong, but for me, GoldenEye was kind of the revolutionary game, where those were good, and they were first-person shooters, just like Turok was a first-person shooter. But Turok, we've already seen an amazing first-person shooter like that in Quake and Unreal and Doom 2 and whatnot over on the PC. Whereas on the PC, you also had games that were coming out like Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, which was an amazing first-person shooter in the Star Wars universe, with full mod support and everything else that happened with that game, and an incredible online community. Turok doesn't fit that bill, and so it, good game for a lot of reasons, but not evolutionary in that regard. Someone brought up, you got to give nod to Half-Life for what became Counter-Strike. The reason I didn't mention Half-Life is Half-Life was released as a tech demo for their early engine. And the reason Half-Life was revolutionary was, number one, because of the storyline, where it was a fully fleshed out, voice-acted first-person shooter with an engaging and dynamic story. But it was also the tech that was involved in Half-Life, making eye contact with a character on screen. That had never been done before. Every character on screen was simply, a fixed model that looked somewhere. Whereas in Half-Life, all of a sudden they had eyes that would track your character, and their head would turn while they were talking, and they were supposed to be talking to you. They weren't just a character that was on rails. And so there were a lot of aspects that we kind of take for granted today that introduced. But at the same time, Half-Life was not a revolutionary multiplayer game. It was good, and it was revolutionary for a lot of issues, but I was talking specifically about multiplayer.
Yeah.
Do I have any pups craft computing? I have two. I have a Australian Shepherd boxer mix named Ruby, and I have a 20-pound black mutt named Zeke. Zeke found us. He wound up on our doorstep New Year's morning about 2.5 years ago. So literally slid in between our screen door and my front door to get warm. And he's lived with us ever since. So, but yeah, I would say Counter-Strike is definitely an evolution of the first-person shooter community, but Counter-Strike was a community mod written on the Half-Life engine that took inspiration from Quake and Unreal Tournament. So it wasn't necessarily Valve going, this is the direction we see first-person shooters and multiplayer going. It was the community taking inspiration from other aspects, and then Valve kind of building, you know, what became Counter-Strike.
Yeah. Good points. Truly, though, multiplayer...
I've been around a while.
Multiplayer first-person shooters really have not, I think, like, gotten better than they were sort of in that golden age, like, mid-2000s, you know, when you had, like, Counter-Strike Source and Halo... And, you know, UTO4 was like the go-to like arena shooter.
You can go, there was kind of a 10-year period, 98 to about 08, where just about every shooter that came out, every good AAA, you know, the same shooters that we know today kind of came out in that era. And that's when the era was kind of defined. What is a first-person shooter? What is a multiplayer first-person shooter? What is a tournament shooter? What is a... that kind of thing. I will say we rely on a lot of the same mechanics that we did back then. But in the last couple of years, we've taken different play modes and tried to balance games much tighter. Where my favorite argument for people who say, I'm just as good on a console as you are on a PC, I'd say, okay, log in to a round of Counter-Strike with a controller and just see how you do.
Yeah.
Because even the worst players on there will blow your mind. Like, good luck.
Yeah. And it's always kind of interesting, too, because a game like Counter-Strike has always just made more sense anyways with the mouse and keyboard. Like, I don't know what it is, but I remember playing Counter-Strike Source all the time on my PC, and I remember they tried really hard to do an Xbox port at one point.
Yeah, there was the orange box.
Yeah, that must have been what it was. And I remember, like, I'll give this a go. And... the game did not make sense, really, from a console perspective, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a game. But I just remember, like, just not being able to connect with it. You know, and those types of, like, I think, like, team-based shooters are kind of like that. Yeah. You know, I think, especially when you come to expect something like Halo delivers, which is just a different experience. Halo translates well on console and PC. Yes. But whatever
it's one
it is
of the
about
few
the
shooters
mechanics,
to translate well on both platforms. It really is. Where it was just as satisfying for the PC players as it was for the Xbox players. And I had just as much fun playing on the Xbox as I did on the PC. I owned it for both platforms. But you take games like Counter-Strike, and it could be just a difference in engine. It could be a difference of controller implementation. There could be a number of different things that affect the way a game plays. Where in Counter-Strike, I liken Counter-Strike to what I call a Twitch shooter, where it's a see, acquire, react, where it's the quicker you react and acquire your target and eliminate your target, the better off you're going to do in that game. Halo didn't feel to me like a Twitch shooter. It's still fast action, but it was slow enough where using your controller to aim was fine. Where if you don't kill your target in the first half second that you see them, they're not already going to have you in their sights. You've got a little finesse within the controls and within the play scheme where you've got a shot. And I think it's just two different approaches to controller mapping, game speed, controller accuracy, etc., that made one translate and the other not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. That being said, Skull has a great idea. We're going to play UTO4 on your cloud machine. We're going to make it happen.
I've been working on the last couple of issues, trying to get it benchmarked. I ran into an unexpected one today, so I've been trying to do a shared storage, so I only have to install the games once, and I can share them on all the different machines. My first thought was to go with iSCSI, but Windows doesn't like multiple connections going to a single iSCSI because it overwrites the permissions every time an iSCSI connects to a new Windows box. And so you're left with either different versions of files or different shortcuts and corrupted recycle bins and all kinds of different weird things. So I went, okay, well, I'll have an iSCSI drive going to the first drive, and now that it's NTFS and an SMB share natively, I can share it out to the other machines, and I can, have the Steam libraries on there. Well, I don't have 6 or 8 Steam libraries to be able to install on all these machines, to be able to test, 6 players in Doom, unless everyone has their own login for it. So I haven't been able to quite figure that one out yet. I do have some good old game DRM free installs that I've got on there. So I've got the original Crisis. I've got Kingdom Come Deliverance installed. But there's nothing like modern that I would want to benchmark on this system. I think the closest I have is like Witcher 3, and it's like, but Witcher 3 is not multiplayer, Right. So what are we gonna do on it? So I'm still trying to tweak it. I'm hoping to have something like midday tomorrow that maybe I can have a couple people join on. What I might just do is open up the server and say, hey, if you guys want to jump in and play, Crisis and Kingdom Come and a couple other games, log into the server, play the single player game, and while you guys are playing, I'm gonna run my benchmarks. So maybe not like a multiplayer thing, but maybe like a single player thing. I don't know. I haven't quite figured it out yet.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
Will you do a Linux multiplayer setup as well? No, because the Linux drivers for vGPU do not exist. So this is a Windows-only solution running on VMware. So,
it's just wild that,
not yet anyway. I should say. Not yet. Also, Parsec is a Windows-only solution as far as game streaming goes, unless you use Steam Remote, which you could use. But I like passing through the entire desktop and having a desktop experience rather than having Steam big picture and then launch a game and then, I have a problem with the game. Oh, well, guess you have to reboot your machine. So...
Yeah, I just remember at the sort of inception of the project, it was like, this... It's ambitious, but it seems so doable.
And here we are.
How naive we were.
With what was 3.5 years ago, $21,000 in hardware. And it still doesn't work the way I want it.
Jeez.
Like, it's working now. Like, I can log into the system and I can play games. Me.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I ignore the shared storage solution and I gave everyone a 250 gig cache and I just said, hey, you can download 250 gigs worth of games and this is your instance that you can use, I think I'd probably be more successful. And so that's probably what I'm going to roll into tomorrow. Is instead of having one installation of Crisis, I'm going to end up with 5 or 6 or 8 installations of Crisis, or however many are actually supported. I've also ran into limitations, not on the graphics side of things, but on other side of things from running more than 4 or 5 virtual machines at a time. I ran out of RAM on my system today.
Yeah, I saw that.
Out of memory. And a couple other things that were very interesting. And so I've got a talking video coming up where I'm going to talk through all that after I get some benchmarks out. I want to get benchmarks out first. And spoiler alert, I'm scheduling a video with Wendell to talk about the technology as a whole and the implementations that we see for it outside of the enterprise. So implementations like I built here. So he and I are going to do not a Talking Heads live show, but a Talking Head video where we kind of walk through all those different scenarios. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed because that'll be a lot of fun. All right. In the words of Jerry McClarkson, what could possibly go wrong? All right. And last but not least for the news, Lower Decks debuts tomorrow. There it is. So the I want to say much anticipated. I've much anticipated this release. Yeah. However, it's been a very polarizing Star Trek, to say the least. Before we've even gotten to what it is, we know it's going to be more in line of a comedy, a comedy drama, a dramedy, if you will. Kind of in the art style and also the humor style of Rick and Morty. Very rapid-paced, rapid fire. A little bit more gory than we might be used to. Probably some swearing. But like it or not, this is now canon, just like Discovery. So we get to see more of it tomorrow. Anything you're particularly looking forward to finding out, Rhett?
No, I'm just excited to watch it. I have zero expectations. I mean, I guess I have the expectation that it's going to deliver the same way that Rick and Morty and sort of Solar Opposites delivers.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I'm just kind of along for the ride. I don't know what to expect. I've been trying to sort of consciously avoid reading too much into it.
Yeah.
Just because, I don't want to get my hopes up or get the wrong idea, much like how people do with No Man's Sky before that launched. But I'm just excited. I mean, I've been of the mind for a long time, not related to Star Trek, but Star Wars. More Star Wars is better than no Star Wars. And I don't see how that doesn't apply to Star Trek. More Star Trek is better Star Trek. More Star Trek is better than no Star Trek. I mean, we could just rewatch TNG the rest of our lives and Deep Space Nine. But, it's time for those of us who grew up with these shows to have our turn in the sandbox. And what's his name? I think it's Mike McMahon. God, I might have butchered that. Yeah, Mike McMahon, who is involved with Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites, gets to have his turn in the playbox. So why not? I support it wholeheartedly. I liked Solar Opposites, and I love Rick and Morty. Yep. Looks great to me.
Well said. Someone says, are they going to release a spin-off called The Upper Decks? And I said, no, it's called The Upper Deckers.
Oh, God.
If you don't like that humor, you're probably not going to like this show, just to let you know. Because I've seen a couple of the early trailers, and it's funny. It's definitely funny, but it's definitely crude in the humor. Much more crude than the Star Trek audience is probably used to. So
yeah.
Or at least the traditional Star Trek audience.
But we got our pure, unadulterated, we
got our Star Trek
utopian. Yeah, thank you. Exactly.
Yeah. Now all we need is season 2 of Star Trek Picard to finally start filming, and maybe we'll get that.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that, I don't know how long exactly Lower Decks has been in production. But one thing we've seen a lot of, especially with like HBO Max and stuff kind of making moves, is a big uptick in animated IPs. Mm-hmm. And just because of the state of the world for the last 6 months, I think we are going to see more animated stuff. So
we're going to see an influx of animated entertainment. Probably even starting to hit, network television and primetime and those traditional, CSI and Biggest Loser kind of spots. Not to pick on CBS, but
no,
and not to pick on CSI. Maybe a little on Biggest Loser, but
but that's the truth. It's going to become kind of difficult, costly, and maybe dangerous to produce those types of shows. Yep. It's going to be less so with animated shows, and I think it's going to be a good thing for the medium. because there's not really many primetime animated shows that aren't comedies. Wouldn't it be interesting to see like a primetime animated show that was a drama or whatever it might be? You know, we see a lot of this in Japan. Like some of the biggest hits movie-wise are animated. Some of the biggest hits drama or romance-wise are animated.
Yeah, I mean you've got movies like Spirited Away and you know classic Japanese films like that, and amazing films, but animated.
Right.
And outside of Disney and the one or two
Pixar.
DreamWorks films, there's never really been that thing as far as American animation goes.
Well, and even then, there is a weird thing where American audiences think that animated stuff has to play more to kids.
Right.
So, like, I truly am having a very hard time thinking of the last animated American animated movie I saw or show that I saw that really kind of catered towards just adults.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess show-wise, you know, obviously there's like Rick and Morty and there's things like this, but it's like they have to err on the side of like being funny.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like you can do a lot more funny things with animation, but as far as like, you know, wanting to watch something serious, there's just not a lot of options out there.
Right.
So I think we might start seeing some of that void filled up, hopefully in the coming, you know, year or so. I'm all game for it. You know, I love anime personally. You know, just I remember watching it all the time as like a, you know, teenager, just because like it dealt with subject matter that was like felt a little bit more mature than like watching, you know, another episode of freaking whatever other comparable animated shows there were.
You can think back to the early and mid 90s about, well, maybe you can't, but you know, you can go back to that time and you've got like the X-Men animated series.
Yes, yeah.
Which wasn't necessarily a funny cartoon. It was a comic book. It was, you know, telling a serious story oftentimes. There were occasionally some elements of humor and occasionally some jokes, but it was storytelling and drama at its heart. You can go to, gosh, there was another one as well.
I mean, there's a lot of those types of shows.
There was a Batman show as well. I'm trying to remember the exact name of that Batman show.
I mean, everybody loves, Kevin Conroy is, you know, to
make there was Gargoyles. Remember Gargoyles from Disney?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right.
Of course. You know, I mean, Mark Hamill is famous to most people, I feel like, for being the Joker. I remember one time talking to somebody, I was like, oh, yeah, Mark Hamill, talking about Luke Skywalker. And they're like, oh, the Joker. I'm like, what? I don't know. Maybe not most people. That might be a stretch, but it's like...
He's more popular for being Luke, but he's also just as popular for being the Joker.
Right. I mean... Yeah, it's kind of wild. I think like maybe up until like the sequel series Star Wars, like a lot of more people really appreciated his work on, I don't know. Yeah, whatever. The point being that the Batman animated series has always had a strong viewership. You know, the X-Men series of the 90s was really popular.
Right.
And there was a lot of stuff back then. And even then you can kind of push
but a lot of those aired Saturday at 10 a.m. They were aired exclusively to kids. They were aired as part of Saturday morning television.
Right.
And so they weren't necessarily marketed to adults or to, you know, young adults or older teenagers. It was, this is the stuff your 7-year-old watches.
Right.
Even though they weren't necessarily, you know, that wasn't their demographic.
Right. You know, and that's the weird thing is like, you know, you watch an anime and, you know, it could be like a contemporary setting, a modern day Japan, and all this sort of stuff. And the way that they like organize their scenes and their shots and stuff, it's like you're watching a real film. Like I can't remember what Japanese movie it was that I watched a couple weeks ago. And I was like, this is so weird because they have like, there's so many like kind of stereotypical anime shots, I call them. And like one of them is like a shot of like the train crossing lights, like bang, 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 the train that's getting ready to come and the arms go down and all this sort of stuff. Or there's one of like the camera up and like the plane is going with like the
well, your cinematography rules still exist within animation. Your composition, your storytelling within cinematography, those rules still exist.
Right.
And those styles still exist there.
But it's interesting to see the shots that I grew up to sort of categorize as like stereotypically anime. Were actually like also stereotypically like Japanese film industry,
right?
You know, which is just a weird, like, to them there's not much separation. Well, maybe that's a broad generalization, but it seems like that there's not much separation. It's like they do it this way in anime, and if you want to film it that way in real cinema, like, you're not going to run into any obstacles. But there are a lot of shots that I never see in American films, you know.
Right.
It's just interesting. And then even if you look at the American film industry, there's no sort of like general vibes or sort of stereotypical or tropish shots or scenes or angles that you get in an animated movie versus what you would get in a live action movie. It's like we regard them as two separate things.
We kind of do. I think the exception there would be Pixar. Where they treat their animation as if it were a live action movie.
Pixar and like an upcoming one, not up and coming, they've been doing great for themselves, but like Leica Studios, you know, they did like Kubo and a couple other things, Coraline. Those are both, you know, they're kind of like pushing the envelope of like the medium. Richard Bogan says we need a heavy metal reboot. Dude, I just rewatched heavy metal. Like, I've been on this weird like 80s fantasy binge for like the last few weeks, and like heavy metal was on my list, and stayed up late to watch it, and it was just as like I just remember being a kid like watching that, blowing my mind a little bit. Like, some of the stories are so good. Not only that, some of the music is so good. It's just like a stereotypical, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Jeff, but it's a stereotypical like 80s fantasy anthology like movie, and some of the stories are so bad, some of them are really good, some of them are god awful, that's like to the point of being good. Like, I don't know.
No, my daughter's lately has been watching Transformers Rescue Bots, and so I'm I think I'm gonna go in and download the 80s Transformers show for her and get her on some classic literature.
There you go. Dude, the 80s Transformer movie was legit.
Yeah.
All those. Yeah, there's something about that era that we just kind of forgot about. But
all right. Well, I think that does it for the news section of our show. We've got about 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, any points of interest, any talking points, anything you'd like us to hear, please let me know, and we'll go.
Irradiate technocracy here says heavy metal wouldn't happen today; it would get canceled, which I just disagree with wholeheartedly.
I disagree wholeheartedly with. Have you seen Rick and Morty?
Right.
Do you know what they get away with saying? They're fine.
Yeah, honestly, I would say Rick and Morty probably pushes the boundary more. Like, there were some like weird scenes in heavy metal, but you know, and it was like almost edgy to be edgy, but like there was nothing that bad in it. Yeah, Akira, great anime movie. You know, they kind of, if you ever seen the movie Chronicle, anybody out there, that's kind of like was supposed to be like a spiritual like Akira live action remake. Yeah, literally in the first, that's the only scene I can think of is like the first story in the anthology is like the weird scene with this like taxi driver and this woman, but like I've seen worse in crappy movies today. Like I don't know. I don't want to go too into detail of like, you know, the sort of like B movie realm, but there's some stuff that like really pushes the envelope of like what's socially acceptable by cancel culture today. And I think complaining about like the few kind of weird, again, like if they remade heavy metal, like why would they even have to do it the same way where they're like, well, women are only objects. Like
Right.
they did that in the 80s one. Why not like re-up it and make something else?
Right.
And that was only like a kind of not even a focal point, but like a thing in like a few of the stories.
Yeah.
Actual Akira live action still happening?
Remember, most cultures only canceled if it's been wrong for the last 60 years. So.
Yeah, right? Thank you. We cancel what our grandparents should have canceled.
Right, exactly. Yep.
I was watching Akira a couple months ago, like right as everything was kind of like heating up here in the US, and there's a scene where they're driving through, New Tokyo or whatever the city's called, and it was like Tokyo 2020 Olympics canceled, and I was like, what? How do they know? Because that movie's from the 80s too, I think, or maybe it's 95 or 96. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Simpsons still probably did it first.
Right. Yeah, true. They got an uncanny ability of predicting things.
Richard brings up an interesting point, and I don't know how much I want to dive into this, but it could make for an interesting conversation for a couple of minutes. It's depressing to think about all the stuff that could be taken down by cancel culture today. Let's put it this way. There are a number of social norms that need changing. Things that were appropriate in the 1940s were not appropriate in the 1970s, were not appropriate in the 1990s, and, and evolved into the 2000s, 2010, 2020s. Social norms change. And while cancel culture gets some things wrong, and in fact, they go a little bit too vitriolic in some cases. I'll just say going after Dan Harmon for making a joke on Twitter in 2010 offhandedly, and all of a sudden he's a pedophile or a child killer. It's like, oh no, comedian known for offensive comment makes offensive comment on Twitter 10 years ago. Things like that, because that came up in the news, and that's an item that I've discussed talking about cancel culture before cancel culture even had a name when the show started 3 years ago. But that's been one that we've talked about. There's a difference between comedy and parody and then putting something into media as a social norm. The point of comedy is to point out social norms that are so abstract as to be funny. And oftentimes comedy gets dark. Comedy is a dark place. It's not supposed to be politically correct. It's not supposed to make you comfortable. It's supposed to make you laugh to kind of prove a point in a lot of ways. But going to Akira and whatnot, and Rhett was kind of pointing it out. There's a difference between pointing out as a comedian, that girls get more views on YouTube because they're able to show cleavage and I'm not, and then exploiting a woman for, your own personal gain, or
right.
holding a position of power over a woman, and holding her position of gain from her. In a quid pro quo situation or whatever else. One of those situations needs to be canceled. The other is biology. So someone says Rambo sounds pissed. Yeah. Rambo's outside the door whining.
Well, and it's an interesting topic, and it's like I'm woefully ill-equipped for this conversation, but just to like roll with the punches here, it's like, if a woman wants to hop on YouTube and like make some like money doing that, like more power to her. Like, we allow people to make money by exploiting children in sweatshops in Bangladesh to sew your underpants, but like we're gonna draw the line at like a woman like wearing a low-cut shirt while playing some games.
And sometimes not even wearing a low-cut shirt, literally wearing a shirt that they wear all the time. That
but then
isn't
a bunch
exposing
of thirsty
anything.
boys come on and are like, wow.
Right.
Yeah,
a bunch of thirsty boys throw money at her, and all of a sudden she is the one that's being inappropriate. It's like, really?
Right. Yeah. Obviously, that's a different situation than a young woman being pressured into a position on camera by people that have some sort of like financial power or legal power over them, like we see with, say, Weinstein.
Right. Let's put it this way. Let's put it into a situation that I've dealt with recently. In talking to, I'm just going to say a female YouTuber. I'm not going to mention any names here, but speaking to a female YouTuber, she's been accused of wearing inappropriate clothing, and it's like, no, that's what she walks around in. That's how she gets dressed every day. That's how women's clothes are cut. She can't help that she has cleavage every once in a while. It's part of anatomy. It wasn't being exposed. It wasn't inappropriate. It was something that you could wear to church. It certainly wasn't offensive. But it's like, oh, you're just wearing that to get views. No, I'm not. But then they're also receiving DMs on, hey, would you test this really weird thing? I'll give you $7,000 for a personal video. Which one of those situations need canceled? The situation of a woman wearing clothing that she bought from whatever department store she happened to shop at that day, that she could wear to any restaurant on any corner of any city, and it would be perfectly acceptable. Wear it to church, wear it to, whatever. Or someone saying, I like the way you talk. I want to see you hand modeling for me in a personal video for $7,000. Which of those situations is inappropriate? Which one gets canceled?
Right.
So like I said, cancel culture doesn't get it right all the time. So now there are movie tropes that are not acceptable to be in as movie tropes. There's the ditzy girl who, can't do anything until the boy shows up to save the day. It happens in every single movie, even movies with strong female characters. Go back a couple of years to what was the English spy movie?
Kingsman,
thank you. Go back to the first Kingsman movie, where you had a very strong female lead for the first 2 acts, and you had a boy who couldn't catch a break and kept getting things wrong. Okay. And she was always the one who was always better than him throughout the first 2 acts of the movie. In the third act of the movie, all of a sudden she's doing this weird thing on a jetpack and becomes the damsel in distress who the boy must save. And the boy goes in, saves the day, kills the bad guy, and then the princess offers him, I'm not going to mention it on this show, but a lewd act for breaking her out of this prison cell. That's the third act of the movie. You take the first 2 things of that and you throw them completely away for tropes that should not exist in movies anymore. And they were kind of done for comedy, but at the same thing, they were done for shock value. And shock value is not cultural awareness. There's a line, and that movie crossed them.
Yeah.
So, and those tropes are in every action movie.
Yeah.
Black Widow is the last Marvel character to get her own movie, and it's after the Avengers series is already done.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of little things that are so funny to me. It's like people.
We already know how it ends. Now we're going to go look at her in a rom-com movie with her sister. Like,
yeah,
that's Black Widow
and a fat drunk slob.
Right.
It is kind of funny to me too that there's so much uproar of like things like Natalie Portman taking on Thor's mantle. Like, what is the problem with this? Like, yeah, we all love Chris Hemsworth, sure. but I don't know. Yeah, it's just bonkers to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thrown by this whole thing that Irradiate Technocracy brought up too. He says, girls that want to model can't model anymore in today's culture. Grid girls got canceled. I didn't know what he was talking about, so I Googled it. And apparently this was a thing 2 years ago, by the way, where grid girls, these are the girls apparently, on the grid of F1 racing,
Mm-hmm.
they're out there holding flags or whatever, or standing by cars and having cameras pointed at them.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, some higher ups in the F1 association thought that it was an outdated tradition and got rid of them. Apparently, and,
there's a couple schools of thought here, and I think we'll kind of close on this one. So a couple years ago, CES and E3 both outlawed booth babes. That is, scantily clad women there to be scantily clad. Oh, what, a girl can't model anymore? There's a difference between a girl modeling and a girl being put out there in a, very revealing outfit that would not be appropriate for the show floor, with a bunch of men wearing suits and, button downs and things like that. And literally being paid to be a sex object in front of their booth to attract other men to that booth. I would put that same parallel to F1 and the flag girls. There was never a hulky guy walking out carrying the ready for start. And in every single racing game I've ever played in my entire life, up until, the very modern age, all the way through early, let's go Road Rash for Sega Genesis. Who met you at the finish line? It was a girl giving you a kiss on the cheek, or, and she was always wearing the red tube top and whatever else. It was 16-bit graphics, but it was very clear what they were going for.
Yeah.
You go to Cruisin' USA, you go to Daytona, you go to this, you go to that. Even like events that wouldn't necessarily have a flag girl, there was a scantily clad flag girl on the game.
Yeah. Well, and wasn't there some sort of weird like sexism issue with like the latest Last of Us game? Like people are having trouble with like Ellie's character model or something. You know anything about that? I shouldn't have brought it up.
I don't. Yeah.
It's just crazy like what people go after anymore. And then they complain about cancel culture. And then my favorite is when people fling around the I don't know, just Irradiate he's got me chuckling because he's used like all the right buzzwords. And it truly, nothing against you, dude. You've just brought out, you've been the focus of conversation because because you use all the right buzzwords to gain the attention. But it's just interesting what people focus on. And I think it says something that there's so much resistance to like changing the way that it's been. And there's nothing wrong with changing anything. I mean, get on board with it. It's the way of the world. Right. I mean, you don't necessarily have to agree with it 100% of the time, but
the difference between modeling as a career, and there's nothing wrong with modeling as a career. There's nothing wrong with it at all. And being a booth babe is, in one regard, it's your own career. You make the decisions. You can accept the role or not. Versus, and having a professional photographer take photos, and you're selling that product in those photos. You're selling the outfit or the accessory or whatever else.
Right.
Versus being nothing but eye candy to attract someone to a booth.
Right.
In a situation that doesn't call for it.
Right.
And
exactly.
Someone says, well, there's what's wrong with the hot chick. They know their demographic and they're playing their games. The problem is they're playing that game, and that game can be exploitative. So, and I usually don't venture into topics like this, but it,
yeah, it's just exploitative in a way, and it's like even modeling, like you said before, there's nothing wrong with modeling necessarily, but the whole marketing behind it, it's like the marketing that's sleazy and gross and that you're trying to end, because it's like you get a picture of a woman and doing all these things, and then somebody goes in with Photoshop and makes the eyes bigger, makes the face more symmetrical, parts the thighs, brings out the hips. Like
pumps up the bust, narrows the waistline.
Right. Like all you got to do to see how crazy is this, go on the subreddit r/Instagram reality. And you see where these people like slipped up in their like face tunes and things like that. And that's like the aspect of modeling that like is unhealthy. But the problem is like you get the gateway drug type thing. You know, it's like I don't know. The D in chat brought up a couple of interesting points, but you know, we could go into this forever, but like what are two white dudes going to solve? Like not much. You know,
we're the definition of privilege sitting here.
They're exploiting men just as well, says Irradiate Technocracy.
Who owns the power in that situation?
Yeah, please. Let's like right then and there, like you bring up
where's the power dynamic? That's the problem with it.
He brings up cancel culture. He brings up third wave feminism. Then he brings up how men have it just as bad. There you go. It's the divine trinity right there. I don't got much more to add to that. It makes me laugh.
All right. It's 10:07. I think that's going to do it for this show. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on episode 144 of Talking Heads, your once weekly live show for the latest in beer and tech news every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Join us every single Wednesday. And who's on next week? Steve's on next week. Subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Twitter to keep up with my daily shenanigans. Follow Rhett on Twitter at RhettIsAwesome or at Game Dev's Quest for his podcast and other events that he's got going on. Speaking of, do you have anything going on that you'd like to plug before we head out?
Personally, nothing too much going on. There is a little bit more action over my podcast, Game Dev's Quest, which you can find more about at gamedevsquest.com. We don't got too many events. Yeah, put it down there. We are reorganizing the show. We're getting back on the road. People who've been checking it out might notice that there hasn't been an episode in a while. Until recently, there has been more releases. Otherwise, come play some D&D with me and my podcast crew over at chaoticamateurs.com. That's all for me.
Awesome. All right, and one last bit is if you like the show and you like what you see, consider joining the Patreon. Link is down in the video description as well. Minimum donation of $1. You can donate as little or as much as you want. I charge per video, and you can set whatever maximum you want. If you only want to donate $1, that's totally cool. If you want to donate more, that is definitely much appreciated. But you'll get exclusive access to my Discord server for that donation. You can join myself, Rhett, John, Steve, the whole crew over on our Discord server. A very active and amazing community over there. Pretty much 24 hours a day activity, hundreds of chat comments throughout the day, lots of discussions, lots of different rooms. It's not just tech, it's cars, it's beer, it's food, it's buy and sell pages, it's cars, it's a lot of other things. Very, very cool. Definitely think about joining on. It helps me keep the lights on around here, and hey, you get to talk to me throughout the week and get some sneak peeks of some projects. So definitely worth it. Thank you guys so much, those who have joined on and those who are thinking about doing it. Other than that, I think we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
All right, later on.